how do we take the Honda Classic, which is a good event with a loyal sponsor, but how do we make it better? How do we take it from 40,000 spectators raising $400,000 a year to this past year raising $5.1 million for charity with 200 plus thousand spectators?
Excited to have Ken Kennerly on the FITTEAM show today to learn a little bit more about you and for you to share your story with our audience.
Chris, great to be here, pal. Thanks for having me on board.
Awesome. So we're gonna get, what we do is we kind of jump way back. We start early, a little bit about your childhood, and for those that don't know, you've been in the sports marketing industry for a long time, but we're gonna jump back into your childhood and start there and early years.
Well, it's an interesting. I'll be 55 years old here shortly, and it's been a nice run. Similar to what you're building a great business, and that's kind of what I endeavored back in the mid '80s. Grew up in New York City. Family's all from the South, Augusta, Georgia. My mom was from, and Virginia, and the Carolinas, and my brother and I were born in New York, so they can call us the Confederate Yankees in our crazy family. But it's been a great run. Born and bred in Manhattan. Went to grammar school down the street from the Guggenheim Museum. Literally born and bred. Went to high school up in Connecticut. At a nice school, prep school up there, and then went to school up at Dartmouth College up in Hanover, New Hampshire, and learned to live in the cold weather. Now I'm down here in South Florida, of course, but it's I got out of school, Chris, in the mid '80s. All my buddies, frankly, in the mid '80s, as people know, they're all going into Wall Street. It was all about investment banking, or you're going to medical school, or becoming a lawyer, and I wanted to do something different. I mean, I was an athlete growing up. I had some business acumen, and it was an industry that I really pursued. It was an industry that I knew was growing. This sports marketing world really got started by Mark McCormick, the founder of IMG, in 1962, and then Donald Dell in '69, and then so on and so forth. And I knew back then if I could parlay my interest and my hobby of sport into business, I mean, gosh, what a great opportunity, right? So it was something that I endeavored to do. As I mentioned, all my buddies were going on to Wall Street and other big time jobs, and I was this kid out of school trying to pursue a dream. And again, it was a dream that I knew was growing. I had to convince a lot of people that I thought I knew I was what I was doing at the time. But look at the explosiveness of sport over the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
It's been an enormous world, and the advertising industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, but sport is right there with it, because sport is a vehicle for a company like yourselves, like FITTEAM Palm Beaches Marathon. You utilize sport to deliver a message. And that's what advertising is all about. So it really dovetails very closely with advertising, with promotion, with getting your brand out there. So it was of phenomenal interest to me, and I got started in the mid '80s as an intern. Really, it's been quite a run.
Before we jump in your internships, you obviously said you play a lot of sports. What sports were your favorite? What did you see yourself doing regularly?
Well, growing up in New York City, we had a lot of sidewalks. We didn't have too much grass, but we did have a place called Central Park. So I played a lot of baseball, played a lot of soccer growing up. Honestly, didn't pick up a golf club until I was in high school, until I went to prep school. So it was really soccer and baseball. I threw a football around. Lacrosse really hadn't gotten started yet, but it was the outdoor sports. I was an active kid, and played on fields that had glass instead of grass, literally in Central Park. And that's kind of what I did. And my dad was an old timer. He got out of Columbia at 37 when Columbia won the Rose Bowl. So I had an older father, and but he was a big sportsman as well. So all team sports for me growing up.
What was your favorite?
I love baseball. I love soccer. I think if I had to pick one of the two, it was soccer. I went on to play in college for a year in soccer, and then switched over to rugby. But it's a team sport, and team sports is hard to duplicate in today's world. And I think you can bring the whole mentality of team sport into business, and it's wonderful. But at the same rate too, I played tennis growing up, and then I started playing golf in high school. And to have the team sport atmosphere and the team sport competitiveness along with an individual sport where really you're relying on your own self, and if you fail, it's because of you. It's nice to have two of those opportunities growing up.
So how was it playing soccer and rugby in college? It must have been
Well, it was great. The reason I went from soccer to rugby, I was recruited for soccer and baseball too, but I focused on soccer, and then And then, like some people do in college, you get a little bit out of shape, and I switched over to the rugby side, which was a lot of fun. I was a small wing forward in rugby, but really enjoyed the camaraderie. Again, team sport. People had a lot of fun. We had just a great time on the sidelines, a great time when we had road trips to different schools, and I'll never give up those days. I mean, they were great memories. I think if I had to do it again, I'd probably been a little bit more disciplined, and maybe would have stuck to my guns a little bit more, because I was a pretty good athlete growing up, and like most of us, you become ex-athletes pretty quickly.
Discipline's obviously important. What's some other things for someone that's watching, maybe just getting started in their, college sports career? Some advice you'd have for them?
Well, you know what? Again, if I had to do it again, I've got two children. They're 23 and 22, and I tell them and my nieces and nephews, and go to school, follow your dreams, but remember why you're there. And again, if I had to do it again, I think I would have been a little bit more diligent. I would have been a little bit more focused. I probably would have been a little bit more successful both on and off the field. But again, when you're a kid, you're going to college, you're going to have a great time, and sometimes the distractions get in the way. But it's an opportunity. Again, it's part of my DNA. It's part of who I am, and you can't change the past. So you got to just take from the past, and hopefully you've done some good things going forward.
What's some tough experiences you faced early on up through high school and college? What's some experiences you can look back on that was a tough time a challenge you faced?
Well, I think for a young person, we're all challenged with so many different things. When I was away at boarding school, so I moved out of the house when I was 14, went to a school up in Connecticut, so I was on my own. That was a challenge by itself, because you got to learn to be responsible. The deans and so forth are going to take care of you only so much, but you're doing your laundry. You're trying to organize your schedule to be as efficient as possible. I had to juggle academics and athletics, which was a challenge. But I think it's part of growing up, and I think the challenge of growing up and being mature as you can be as a young kid, and making right decisions. I think that's a big challenge too, is making right. We're all going to make bad decisions. It's just we hope you don't make bad ones. But if you make bad ones, you got to learn from the bad ones and take the good from the bad.
Absolutely. So right after college, what was the next step for you?
So, I wanted to pursue the sports marketing world. I actually got interested in this business.
I was just going to ask, when's the first time you got really interested in doing that?
Yeah, so another thing I did as a kid, not in school, but I grew up sailing. So I did a lot of competitive racing in the Long Island Sound. And I was fortunate enough to be on the water and to learn what that's all about. So that's kind of another activity I did growing up. When we lost America's Cup in the early 80s, I'm one of these nerds that was watching it live on ESPN from Australia. And I'm noticing at the time that all of a sudden all this commercial spinnakers and sails and signage, kind of what we see today in baseball and in football. I mean, you're seeing hockey. I mean, you're seeing commercial signage everywhere. And it dawned on me, really, like, first of all, why is this going on? I mean, this was an old Corinthian sport. It was a sport that you wouldn't see anything other than the sailmaker, perhaps, and a sail number. But it was, again, back to our discussion, it was a way for commercial entities to take their brand and to utilize sport to help deliver a message. So depending on the demographics of whatever sport or whatever activity, whether it's the arts, the theater, or sport itself, companies are aligning themselves with certain activities, and they're doing it as a way to basically transcend their message into a demographic audience. So, again, I get out of school, my buddies went to Wall Street, and I just banged on a lot of doors. I also pursued the broadcasting business, the production business, interviewed with CBS and NBC. ESPN, as you know, had just gotten started in the early 80s. And I was fortunate. I banged on a lot of doors, and a door opened as an intern. I was just literally right out of school, and I worked on a PGA Tour event, basically, banging stakes and putting up ropes and helping put up bleachers and doing whatever I needed to do.
Wow, so obviously fascinated to hear from that to where you are today. So let's slowly walk in between that time frame.
Well, it's been 2 years now. We have a lot of interns that we hire and that we hire as interns, and in business, as you well know, because you built a fantastic brand with FITTEAM and a fantastic company, if you find someone good, you don't want to let them go. So you find a good male or female, obviously doesn't matter. You want to create an opportunity for that person. So I think an internship is a critical period of young people's lives. And while I understand that it doesn't pay what people are wanting to pay, it gets you experience. And if I can get in the door as a young person, or someone can get in my door as a young person and work their tail off, and then work themselves into a job, it's phenomenal. And that's kind of what I did. Is I just worked hard. I love what I did. I love the game of golf. So I was in the industry. I was, literally bagging stakes and putting up ropes and, helping people with walkie-talkies, getting to know the players. And, I just figured if I outworked the next person, then, I might have a little bit more opportunity to get a full-time career. And that's what I did. So I ended up working for a company called ProServe as an intern. In the mid 80s, 87 when I got out of college, and worked myself into an entry level job and got into the player representation business. So I represented players from really 88 onwards, represented players like Hale Irwin and Lee Jansen and Duffy Waldorf and a number of guys, and then went from ProServe. Again, Donald Dell started ProServe in '69. He was kind of the secondary guy behind Mark McCormick. He was a tennis player, so he started the company representing Stan Smith and Arthur Ashe, whereas Mark McCormick represented Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Jack Nicklaus in the early '60s. So Donald did it in tennis, but I was a golf guy. So I was the lone golf guy in his company, running events, and then, as I mentioned, representing some players as well. So it's been marvelous, and I've touched really all sides of this great sports marketing industry. It's been fun.
So how did you go from intern to beginning to do that? Like, when did you decide you're going to go off and do that? Or?
Well, so as a young kid, you're looking for opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an opportunity. Again, I played golf, so I knew some of the players. And my first two clients were Lee Jansen, two-time U.S. Open champion, now on the Champions Tour, and Kirk Triplett. And Kirk graduated from University of Las Vegas, Nevada, with a civil engineering degree, ironically. And they used to say, and it's a great line, a buddy of mine used to say, well, Lee Jansen is the guy that reads books with pictures, and Kirk Triplett reads books without pictures. Because of his civil engineer, brilliant guy, and they're both brilliant people, good people. So I started representing them, and we did all their endorsement deals, and then I parlayed that into other players. And the peak of my career probably represented about 22 players, including Hale Irwin and other multiple major
Mm-hmm.
winners over the years. And that took me from, call it 88 to really through through the early 2000s, but I left D.C. and I was hired by Jack Nicklaus to come down here in Florida in '94 to run what at the time was Golden Bear Sports Management. So Jack left IMG. Jack started his own business, but he also wanted to get into the management business of athletes because, and I think for the right reasons, his company was built around representing him. And he's the greatest player of all time. So if the company is there, created, and has the foundation to represent the greatest player of all time, has all the relationships with the corporate markets, tournaments around the world, what a nice extension for that company to get into the representation of other professional golfers. So that's really, he brought me in to run that, and I did that for a few years before I started my own business.
Love to hear about, obviously, getting your very first client, Lee, I think.
Lee Jansen.
Lee,
Yeah.
just how that felt, and then, obviously being hired by Jack. So it's two amazing things. So.
Well, right, and one of the I don't want to call it a difficult decision, Chris, but I love D.C. I love Washington. I grew up in New York. We're living in D.C. now from the mid '80s to '94. I didn't want to leave Washington. I mean, Washington is such a great town, and but Jack had called, and I'm in the golf business. So when Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer call, I mean, am I really not gonna make a jump? But it took a couple convincing discussions, believe it or not. So I went from, on one end, representing, Rookie of the Year, Lee Jansen, to working closely with the greatest of all time, and the 18 major winner, Jack Nicklaus. It was phenomenal, and the ability to recruit young players underneath his umbrella was phenomenal. Because people hear about the Golden Bear, and if you're a young star, it's kind of like today what we're seeing with Tiger, is all these young stars like Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth, and these guys put Tiger up on that pedestal like they put Jack up on a pedestal. So, when you're going in there with a calling card with the Golden Bear, it was really neat. But it was also fun. It taught me all about different deals. It taught me to get creative. Jack was representing many companies for millions of dollars in endorsement deals. When, at the time, Lee Jansen, if we did a $10,000 deal, Chris, it was a grand slam.
Sure.
But it was a lot of fun. And Jack ended up going public in 1996. Golden Bear went public. The call letters were Jack, on the Nasdaq, of course. And it was time for me to move on. Going public is a tough row for a lot of companies, and that's when I started my own business. So I took my entrepreneurial roots, getting into this crazy business, working for companies, but then I really wanted to go out and start my own business and to see what I could do. So in 1996, I left Golden Bear and started what was then International Golf Partners, which was purely a sports agency. So I represented players, did some events, did some consulting, and I grew that, in 96, probably, oh goodness, I sold to IMG in 2013. So I ran the business for, 17 years, grew it up to 40 employees. So it was, for me, it was a big apple I had to, bite off every year from a salary standpoint. But I diversified from players to the event business. I bought a couple event companies along the way. I had a consulting arm, primarily in golf. We did get into some broadcasting. I put a couple players today. Brandel Chambly, that was on the tour, he was a client. I put him into broadcasting. Mark Lai was one of the first commentators on the Golf Channel. We did his original deal. John McGinnis is in broadcasting. Charlie Reimer is with the Golf Channel. So these are all golfers that were retiring and looking for another career. So we found that career. I also represented, one of my all-time favorites who recently passed away, Jack Whitaker. Jack was a true icon in the game of sport broadcasting, and he's up there with Vin Scully and Kurt Gowdy and some of the great legends of the game, and representing icons like that was a lot of fun.
So getting started, let's go back to, was it 95? I think it was. We're on there when you talk about some of the challenges the first year or two, because anytime you get started on anything, there's obviously some difficulty and some struggle.
There is. I mean, you're leaving the nest. I mean, when I was leaving Golden Bear, Jack didn't want me to go. He goes, "Well, why are you leaving?" I said, "Well, Jack, look, you're going public. The player business is a difficult business from a financial standpoint to kind of work on quarterly earnings. It's all about quarterly earnings when you're going public. The event business, Executive Sports, was a good firm as well. But I just thought, Chris, at the time, if I'm going to do this, let's give it a shot." I think I was 32 years old at the time in 96, so I jumped out. Now, to Jack's credit, he financed my initial loan, which was great. So I didn't have to try to dig up money or go beg for my parents to help support me, and so he lent me the money to get started, and I paid him back. And one great story, when I paid him back, he essentially looked at me and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, this is the advance that you gave me to start my business." And he looked at me and he goes, "I never thought you'd pay me back." I said, "Well, Jack, I gave you my word I would pay you back, and I was brought up the right way. If I give my word and I can do it, I'm going to do it." So I wrote him a check for what he loaned me, and it was funny. He goes, "No one else has ever paid me back." So, but it's what, it's all about going through life. We only have one opportunity to go through life, so you want to do it the right way.
Right. No, that's awesome. That's a great story, and so I think you brought us up to 2012 or 13.
So I represented players, bought event companies. Another great story was, so my first internship was with a company called Executive Sports. It was right before ProServe in '87. So I ended up buying Executive Sports from Jack in 2000. So I left Jack in '96. I bought Executive Sports from him. So it was kind of cool. I bought the company that I was an intern at.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a little David and the Goliath story a little bit, but Jack was downsizing. He was looking for partners. He didn't want to just sell his entities. He had multiple entities, and he was kind of downsizing. He didn't want to just sell to anybody. But when I heard he was looking to liquidate a few things, I approached him, and that was really cool. And that was 2000. Then I ran that company. We managed, we were involved with probably 20 odd PGA Tour events at any one time, from operations to providing volunteers to, of course, running full events like the Honda Classic, like we do now, and it was fun. But with anything in life, Chris, you're going through ups and downs. We got 9/11 right in 2001. That set the industry back a little bit. We had another recession in 2008, 9, 10, which set the recession back. And while we don't anticipate companies to make cuts, look, when earnings are down, you've got to make tough decisions. And on one hand, in a recession, certain industries should frankly be spending more because it's an opportunity to command additional attention and an opportunity to grow your consumer base. But it's also, a time, unfortunately, where people cut back. So I ended up spinning off executive sports to a buddy of mine that ran it for me, and he's still running it today, which is great. But at the time, I picked up the Honda Classic in 2006. So that was really my next big opportunity. So the PGA Tour came to me really in 2005 and basically said, look, Honda is in our backyard up here in Palm Beach Gardens. We're going to make a change. Honda needs to have some new blood. The way the PGA Tour works is every event is a 501c3. So I don't own the event. I have a management company that runs the event for our foundation, for our board. So the PGA Tour essentially said, look, we're gonna start a new foundation, and if you have any ideas, let me know. And I said, I've got the only idea. Let's bring in Jack and Barbara Nicholas. Let's bring in their foundation, the Nicholas Children's Healthcare Foundation. Let's make them the beneficiary and the host organization for the Honda Classic from 2006. Really, first event was 2007 to what is today our 14th event going forward. It's going to be Honda's 38th event as the title sponsor. Wow. So I brought in Jack and Barbara. We created a separate organization called Children's Healthcare Charity, Inc., which was the pass-through vehicle that we used from the event to then give money to Nicholas Children's and to, frankly, over 100 other local children's-related charities. So, we sat in front of Honda in '06. We had to convince them that we had new ideas, that I had new ideas. One was Jack and Barbara. Perfect, right? It's hard to get better than the Nicholas family in the game of golf. Arnold Palmer would be really the only other one in terms at that level. And then we essentially said to Honda, look, trust me, because what we're going to market is going back to my marketing roots. We've got to create something different for this tournament. If it's just another golf tournament, just another golf tournament. The world we're in is in the entertainment space. I mean, that's why we're sitting here today. It's all about communicating different ideas and thoughts to potential customers and prospects. So for me, it was, how do we create an event that is more than a golf tournament? How do we take the Honda Classic, which is a good event with a loyal sponsor, but how do we make it better? How do we take it from 40,000 spectators raising $400,000 a year to this past year raising $5.1 million for charity with 200,000+ spectators? You do it through the entertainment space. We're doing it through so many different, the PGA Tour, the players, the best in the world, they're going to take care of themselves inside the ropes. It's the creativity outside the ropes that I think is paramount and is critical to business today. If companies aren't thinking about doing things outside the ropes, doing things a little bit differently, and ways to get your brand exposed and get your brand out there, you're going backwards. So every year we've been so fortunate. You've been a great partner, are a great partner of the Honda Classic, and we'll get into our other great partnership here in a little bit. But it's about just getting great people that believe in what you're doing. And as we say, the four wheels of the car, they've got to be running in the same direction. So we cater to kids, families, of course, philanthropy, putting on a great show. It's probably the place to be end of February, early March in Palm Beach County. Businesses, again, 200,000+ people are coming out there. So, I'm thrilled with the growth that we've had over the last 13 years. It's truly been phenomenal. We're extremely fortunate. The PGA Tour, the best practices, the accolades we've received from the community and from people like yourself, our great partners and sponsors, has been phenomenal. It's only getting better.
It is absolutely phenomenal. For those that may have missed it, talk about the first year to now, those numbers once again.
Yeah, so our first full year was 2007. So we had about 60,000 people. So the 2006 event had 40,000 people through the gates for the whole week.
Oh.
Our first event was about 60,000. The '06 event raised 400,000. We raised, I think it was 750 in the first year. So we almost doubled the first year. And we didn't know what we had. We had a tail by the, tiger by the tail, and we're trying to figure it out. And like most businesses, right? You got to do things the right way, but it's a learning curve all the way around. So we went from essentially our first year, 60,000 people, 750,000 contributions, to 200,000+ spectators, to $5.1 million to charity. So it's been a nice upward growth model. We got hurt a little bit in the recession, to be expected, but that was the only year we took a blip backwards, and that was ironically the year we had the big storm out there at PGA National.
Oh, absolutely phenomenal. So let's get into a little bit about the marathon.
Yeah, so here we are. We're in the event space. I've been doing this for so many years, and when you and I met, being an entrepreneur, the Palm Beaches Marathon was started in 2004, and the Chamber of Commerce started it, and they had sold it off to a couple sports marketing companies. Frankly, that didn't give it the attention they should have. For various reasons, but the chamber ended up taking it back, and I bought it. And I just said, look, I'm in the market. I'm local. I've got a $20 million event currently that I'm doing in market, so this is a natural for us. Palm Beach County deserves the best. I mean, we live in the best place on the planet, in my opinion. Why not take over the marathon and find the right partners to make it work? The people that have similar vision. And of course, it's called the FITTEAM Palm Beaches Marathon for a reason. We've got a great presenter in Jupiter Medical Center, as you know. But if it wasn't for you guys believing in our vision going forward, we wouldn't be where we are today, because it takes sponsorships, it takes commitments. It's a business that, like a lot of businesses, it takes a little while to get going. I mean, it took the Honda, now 13 years to get to $5 million in charity contributions, but it's an exceptional property. It's one of the really 3 blue chip properties in Palm Beach County. One being, if I can say, the Honda Classic. 2 being the FITTEAM Palm Beaches Marathon. And 3, really, look what we're doing with Major League Baseball. And you're a big proponent of Major League Baseball with spring training. So, you've got an enormous economic engine with the Honda. You've got an enormous economic engine with the FITTEAM Palm Beaches Marathon. And, of course, with, what we're doing here with 4 Major League teams, now 2 in the World Series.
Right.
At the FITTEAM ballpark of the Palm Beaches is phenomenal. So, you've got your brand everywhere. You're on you're on top of title 2 of the 3 marquee properties, and of course, you're a great partner of the Honda Classic. So, you guys are doing such a great job. I know this is your headquarters, but you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're giving back to this great community. And you guys are making a hell of a difference. And again, look what's going on now. I mean, we got 2 World Series teams that call home the FITTEAM ballpark of the Palm Beaches, and it's just a marvelous thing. So that, coupled with the FITTEAM Palm Beaches Marathon, which is going to kick off in year 3 of our partnership on December 8th, it's just it's growing. We're doing well.
It's absolutely incredible times for FITTEAM in obviously the county, and I'm excited for everything going on with us. But also, I want to thank you for the partnerships and everything that you've been able to do for us. We really appreciate it.
I can't thank you enough, and congrats on everything you've done. And I think more importantly, Chris, the way you and your team give back to this community. I mean, yeah, you're building a hell of a business, but you're not taking your eye off the ball about how important it is to also take care of your community along the way. So thank you, pal.
Thank you so much.